With 2023 rapidly drawing to a close, our thoughts turn to next year's World Confectionery Conference, which once again returns to Brussels. As part of the show, we'll be having a number of keynote speakers. Among them will be Joke Aerts of Tony's Chocolonely, who will be discussing a number of aspects of the business, including its approach to major supply chain challenges.
To be asked to be a keynote speaker, and I'm looking forward to the event. I think one of the roles that Tony Chocolonely has in the sort of chocolate world is not only to be an example of good sourcing, but also to inspire others to act. And these types of conferences are a great way for us to interact with the rest of the cocoa industry, get inspired by what others are doing, and hopefully inspire others to improve their supply chain as well. I think it's really important to have opportunities to mingle with others in the same industry as ourselves. We're all facing the same challenges, right? And cocoa has extremely common challenges in terms of poverty, in terms of child labor, in terms of deforestation. It's something we can only solve together. So it makes sense to frequently come together, hear from each other, learn from each other, be inspired by each other. So I'm excited to I'm looking forward to taking part of the conference. Thank you for inviting me.
Really interesting to have you on board. And can you tell us a bit about your own journey there? What drew you to working in the sector yourself?
I've been working in sustainable tropical commodity agriculture for over 20 years. So think coffee, tea, cocoa, palm oil, those types of commodities. I've been in cocoa now for 5 years. And I think that the sustainability issues are frequently shared amongst all those commodities. This is my first time working for a privately owned company. So Tony Chocolonely is an actual chocolate company, or we like to say we're an impact company that makes chocolate. I came from the NGO sector. What I really enjoy about my job now is that as the NGO sector, we're trying to influence, or the whole civil society sector tries to influence industry from the outside. At Tony Chocolonely, I get to take the opportunity to influence from the inside of the supply chain, which really gives you a whole different platform, a whole different almost authority to speak to how companies can take responsibility for responsible sourcing. So I've really enjoyed that part of my work.
Great. And Tony's itself, what made you want to work for them in terms of how it does business and as an entity? What makes it special in your eyes?
I think that I really, for me personally, only can work for a mission-driven organization, which Tony Chocolonely is at its core. There's not a single sales representative at Tony Chocolonely who can't tell you that we are trying to change the norm in the cocoa industry, that we're trying to end exploitation in cocoa together, not just for Tony Chocolonely, but other companies as well. So I just feel that companies really can be a force for good. And I'm really excited to be, I've been really inspired by working at Tony Chocolonely for that.
Indeed. And as you touched upon earlier, there are a lot of challenges in the industry, including child labour and deforestation and farmer pay. So can you explain how Tony's is really trying to do its best to up its game in all those aspects?
Yeah, I think if you look at the Tony Chocolonely origin story, the hook there really is child labor. 17 years ago, being completely shocked that chocolate, which is ultimately a sweet, an indulgence, a luxury, not necessary, but something that is optional, that would be built on the de facto existence of child labor in the cocoa industry. So that was the origin story of Tony's, and so a lot of our communication is around child labor, which is a massive problem and needs to be addressed in cocoa. Right, 1.56 million children are in child labor in West Africa in cocoa alone. But child labor, if you focus only on that issue, it puts the burden too much on farmers, whereas the real inequity in cocoa is how the supply chain is organized and who's taking responsibility for what. So child labor is a symptom of a bigger problem. And the core problem is, of course, poverty of smallholder cocoa farmers. I mean, companies have been making commitments on reducing child labor for 20 years, 30 years. And as an industry, we're not seeing the needle move. I'm very excited to report that within our supply chain, which by the way is not just for Tony Chocolonely, but for other chocolate companies that join us in our way of sourcing cocoa, we are seeing the needle move down, specifically from a prevalence rate of around 46% of child labor in a normal cocoa supply chain, which is what we see when we start working with a cooperative. But in the 11 cooperatives that we work, we see a prevalence rate of 11.2% currently. And in the co-ops that we've been working with for a long term, we're seeing 4.1% prevalence rate. So we absolutely still have child labor, but we're seeing the numbers go down. And why is that? It's because we're focusing relentlessly on finding and remediating child labor, but we're also addressing all of the enabling environment that goes around it, which includes traceable cocoa, knowing who you're buying from, paying a higher price for cocoa, a price that actually enables a living income for smallholder farmers, because poverty is what leads to child labor. So really doing a holistic approach towards sourcing cocoa is how you can address specific problems in the supply chain.